I think anybody who's trying to make that jump from Canon to Sony, the hardest part is probably knowing that you have all these Canon lenses and trying to adapt them over to your Sony body. Well, I found the perfect solution, and I'm gonna talk about it right now. What's good, creative fam? Brandon Washington here. And first of all, if you're new to the channel and you're into filmmaking, gear, tips, tutorials, all that great stuff, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button because this is the perfect channel for you. But as I mentioned before, in this video, we are going to primarily be talking about how I was able to adapt some of my Canon lenses over to a Sony body. Now, a couple months ago, I actually went on a trip to Las Vegas and I rented the Sony a7R III, which if you are interested in my thoughts on that camera, you can definitely check out the card above. But I had all these Canon lenses because I primarily shoot Canon, but from time to time, I like to try out some different Sony cameras. And so I needed to find a way to adapt all of my Canon lenses over to my Sony body. This led me to the Metabones Speed Booster. Now, the Metabones Speed Booster is basically an adapter that allows you to put Canon lenses onto Sony cameras. Now, the biggest question I had was, how does this work for autofocus? Because I am a huge advocate for autofocus. I love autofocus. I understand that a lot of filmmakers believe that manual focus is the only way to go, but personally, I find that whatever helps you tell the story should be, use that tool. So for me, autofocus definitely comes in handy. And so with using Sony cameras, I wanted to know how this whole thing works. So first of all, when you get the Metabones Speed Booster, it's actually pretty small. Now, personally, I think the size of this Metabones Speed Booster is super important because one of the main things that people love about the Sony cameras is how small they are. And so having something that's already very small and only having to attach this really small, compact little adapter to it keeps that package really tiny. Continuing along with that, it also has this nice little mounting point. So that way, if you ever do attach this thing to like a small, like a6300, a6500, and you're putting a big Canon lens on there, like maybe something like the 24-105, you can actually attach your quick release plate for your tripod or gimbal or whatever directly to the speed booster, and that normally gives you a really good solid base without having such a heavy lens on such a small body. Now, what I found as far as the autofocus goes is that this thing worked tremendously well, but only with certain lenses and only with certain features. So for example, with the a7R III, there's a mode on there called eye autofocus, which basically allows the a7R III to be able to track someone's eye and keep that in focus, which is great for portraits and things like that. However, I found when I adapted my Canon 16-35 2.8 lens that it would not allow that to actually work. However, it still would allow for the normal autofocus to take place. But then I tried my 50mm 1.2 lens out with the Sony, and that did not work at all. The camera actually told me that it was unable to use any of the autofocus features with that lens. Now, I'm not sure if that's because this lens is significantly older than my 16-35, but apparently there are certain lenses that will work even with the Metabones Speed Booster and some that will not. Now, the one major benefit that I loved about the Metabones Speed Booster was its overall build quality. This thing is built amazingly well. Now, it should be for the price. Recently, I did a video a couple months ago where I compared the 1DX Mark II versus the A7S II, and I was just looking at them side by side from a video standpoint. But when I was using the A7S II, I actually had to use this cheaper, smaller little adapter in order to use my Canon lenses on that body, and I kept dealing with what was called light leak, which basically is where my camera lens was actually separating from the adapter, which was causing light to leak in directly to the sensor, causing these weird streaks of light on my video, which ultimately I thought was unusable. But when it came to the Metabones Speed Booster, I did not have this issue whatsoever. I even tried to shine light in on it and never had any issues with that whatsoever happening. So by far, I definitely think that the Metabones Speed Booster is the way to go when looking for an actual adapter for your Sony cameras. But I guess all that to say that the Metabone Speed Booster has definitely won me over as the best adapter for EF lenses for Sony. But tell me what you guys think down in the comments below. Also, if you thought this video was helpful, definitely give it a big thumbs up. Check out some of these other videos also that I put out. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.